the neglect?
It was a blessing.
How, and I know we've talked about this, it's something that you lived with as a child and now live with as an adult. So how do you explain to somebody what you just live every day? But given that, how does it come about that you have multiple personalities? I mean, we talked about the abuse. Is that generally, what's the definition, I guess, is that what I'm trying to ask?
Well, it's called DID, which is, I have no idea because I tried to look it up right before. But my doctor could explain it to you in detail. She knows it all. But it's dissociative identity disorder. And it's when different memories are put into different compartments. And so basically, the way I know how to explain it is Ruby carried memories for me that I couldn't carry. And it wasn't until I started writing the book that I actually knew what the memories were. You know?
Yeah.
Because Ruby told me. Had I not written that book, I don't think I would have known all that I know now.
And you think you would have been able to grow to this place where you are today?
No, because I can now sit and say, I am not ashamed. I'm not ashamed. So many people go through this. And I've had so many women and men come up to me and say, thank you. Thank you. You know, my childhood was not exactly the same, but I experienced those feelings. I experienced that pain. Or I have multiple personalities and I'm a CEO of a corporation and I can't tell anybody, you know?
So people can actually cope and carry on daily lives. I guess maybe it's like sort of being addicted to alcohol or drugs or something like that, but you're a working addict. I mean, you can figure out a way to cope and deal with everyday life, and the same with multiple personalities.
I don't think it's an addiction.
No, but I mean in the sense that it's something that you're not going to be, you know, necessarily outed because you know how to manage it.
Yeah.
If for lack of a better term, not necessarily, you know.
Yeah. I think the thought of when people think of multiple personalities, and I think in the 90s it was like really elaborated on, where a person would switch and it would be a drastic, non-functioning person. You know, the reality is a true multiple person, a true woman with multiple personalities, or man, a lot of them are very functional. Actually, they're high functioning. You know, nobody knew for 16 years, you know, except for my doctors and stuff, but they didn't know.
Do women tend to have, you mentioned women probably because you are, and that's your experience.
Right.
But do you know if there's any research on that maybe women are more likely to become, have multiple personalities than men, or not? I
have no idea. I mean, I know that men are sexually abused too. I imagine that, you know, I'm not sure. I did have a man come up to me and say I was diagnosed with multiple personality disorder, and now I've realized, you know, it's not a disorder and I have nothing to be ashamed of.
Right.
You know, and so, yeah, and I think that right now we need to be aware that more boys are being trafficked, you know, used as prostitutes and stuff than girls are right now. They're on higher demand. And so I imagine we're going to see more and more of it.
Right.
You know, hopefully through this show I will be able to encourage people to start talking about it in a way that it's not dysfunctional, but it's okay.
Yeah.
And they learn to embrace those personalities and they don't lose time. You know,
right.
Because it wasn't until I started to embrace the personalities that I was able to stand back, but without losing time, you know.
I want to talk about a little bit more about that and how you got from, you know, the point where you said, okay, that was my past, I'm a child, now I'm going to be an adult and get married and have children, and then you actually had to come out, if you will, for lack of a better term. But at first I want to talk about how sometimes, I mean, the book is called Looking Through the Eyes of an Unseen Child, and I think this paragraph in particular really speaks to that. I just wanted those eyes, meaning in this case you were talking about you were finally gone to school, you were in class for a little while. I just wanted those eyes to accept me, to love me, and make me away, and take me away from the world my siblings and I live in. I wanted a mother and father so bad. The pain was so great that I thought if I looked down, I would actually see the pain through my clothes. That's pretty powerful stuff that a child would have to go through that, and no one was seeing you. Talk to me about not being seen, and if, and not being heard. You couldn't tell anyone, obviously, but how does a child communicate? What they're going through?
Well, I tried and ended up in the hallway, and ended up in trouble. I tried to be seen. A child who is not seen, who's being abused, will make themselves seen. That is the reality. Through violence, through abuse, through alcoholism, through something, but they will make themselves seen. But they won't make it through going to the principal or going to a teacher and saying with words. Most children do not have those words.
Right.
They don't have those words. And if they do have those words, they have been told over and over, you tell those words and you will die. So I think that we tried to create other ways to communicate.
Right. By acting out.
Acting out, writing in books, hoping that the teacher would look at my drawing, Instead, it was just another drawing of a difficult child, and she just passed it on and said, that's good, sweetie.
Right.
When I'm going, yeah, we're in this motel. Can you please, save us?
Help.
Yeah. And she just saw me as a difficult child.
Do you think that times have changed a little bit over the past 20 some odd years and it's gotten better? Are teachers better prepared? They can only do what they know and what they're trained with. Or are they better prepared? Are social service workers better trained in spotting abuse, or are we still sort of living in the dark ages, if you will?
My niece said this really well one time because she is going to school to be a teacher. She said she was sitting in class and the students were talking about, what is our job as a teacher? And the other students were like, to be a teacher, to teach them math and English and science. And my niece said, no, not anymore. Our job is to be a teacher, a mother, a caretaker, a psychologist. We now have much more than just to teach them a lesson.
Right.
And that's true. I think that teachers, one, should be paid just as much, if not more, than doctors.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. But
or professional athletes.
Exactly. Totally. Because they deserve it. I mean, their responsibility, is creating our future. And there's so much abuse out there. And they're the ones, they're the ones who are going to face it every day.
Yeah.
And there's so much, kids are getting crammed, 32, 35 kids in one class. How can that one teacher see the signs of abuse?
Right.
Or, that's impossible. And so, I think we are letting our children down. I think we're letting the future down. As having done foster care and adopted, 5 children, we're letting them down. Social services, I think that they are overwhelmed. They're undertrained, and the system is cracking.
So you were able to, eventually grew up and you married your husband.